Max, you have a film coming out that's called Upon Waking. Would you mind telling me more about what your movie covers and why we should watch it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Upon Waking is a supernatural romance film about two women who fall in love in the midst of a near-death experience. And they get carbon monoxide poisoning on their first date, and they fall into a coma, and their spirits leave their bodies and fall in love while their bodies are unconscious on the couch. And so, it deals with falling in love with the first time, but in this spirit world where time is different from how we experience it, and they are pretty much stuck together for an eternity, and they, in the course of falling in love with each other, they also need to deal with their insecurities, their self-hatred, and um, their pain, which takes the form of this kind of shadow figure that haunts them throughout their experience in the spirit realm.
That sounds like a big kind of a topic, very elaborate. So, what got you interested in this NDE space, first of all?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny, for my first feature film, I wanted to try to tell something as simple and manageable as possible, because that's kind of what you need to do with your first film. Is you start small, and especially when it comes to locations and logistics and actors, like, you kind of want to make something with as few resources as possible. So I was trying to think of ideas that were contained, that took place in one, or as few as possible locations. And that approach just really wasn't working. I was kind of trying a whole bunch of different ideas, and I would write myself into a corner, and it wasn't working for a really long time. But then when I started to learn about NDEs, and I read Raymond Moody's famous book about NDEs, and I read several others and watched a lot of videos, and that's when things really started to click, because people, when they undergo NDEs, oftentimes they emerge completely transformed. They have a completely different outlook on life, and they see things, completely differently, and they have a whole new perspective. And ideally, that's what love also does, and that's what film also does. In a film, a character goes through an experience, and they emerge transformed and with a completely new perspective. So the idea of combining an NDE with the transformative power of love and the transformative power of filmmaking was really compelling to me, and that's how it all got started.
Oh, I can absolutely imagine. And one of the things that you mention is the power of love, and this being something that really came through to you when researching NDEs. So I'm very glad that that's one of the main topics of the film. And in the movie, I hope we're not giving too much away, but the two girls need to learn to love themselves to be able to come back to this reality. Why did you choose this? And is this something that you think in today's world we need to do more of? Is it important?
Yeah, I think so. I think more people should love themselves, and yes, certainly. Yeah, I guess so. I often write a lot about characters who struggle to forgive themselves, either for something they've done or some defect that they think that they have, and characters that struggle with insecurity and self-loathing on some kind of level. I often find myself coming back to those types of characters and writing those types of stories. And yeah, and I find that a very, compelling and necessary story to tell. Yeah, and in this film, the two characters, they have a lot of pain from their past, and or ordinarily on a first date, you wouldn't talk about your, your pain and your trauma. You would just talk about what you like to watch on Netflix. But the fact that these characters are trapped together for, what feels like eons, they really drill down into, who they are and what value they bring. They have to learn how to love each other in order to wake up and to move past this experience.
And because this is quite a singular situation, where this first date sort of goes into this different realm, so it lasts for a longer time. Do you think this is a happy accident that somehow this one date seems to, go very in depth with insecurities, with fears, as opposed to most conventional first dates?
Yeah, sure. So it's it's a first date that kind of turns into a lifetime together, and and so I also, I don't want to give too much of the film away, but the 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 characters, so they don't like each other in the beginning. It's a first date that's not going well, and when they discover that they're stuck with each other, they're dismayed. They're really disappointed, and it kind of seems like they're trapped together with the worst possible person for each of them. But through time and through opportunities for connection and to let the relationship blossom, they realize that they are actually the perfect person to be trapped together with, because they complement each other so well and have the ability to heal each other's particular wound so well.
That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it's probably a coincidence, but I, met and got engaged to my now wife during the process of making this film. So, I put a lot of my own personal, even though I'm nothing like the characters in the film, I put a lot of my own personal feelings into this love story.
Oh, I can imagine. That's so beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, one of the other topics that the film covers is also forgiveness. So, what was it about forgiveness that sprung out from NDEs for you, and how did you choose to weave it into the film?
Yeah, I don't know if it necessarily sprung from NDEs themselves, although people, when they undergo NDEs, they often, experience a review of their life and come face to face with the mistakes they've made or missed opportunities, but then they are often accompanied by this kind of all-knowing and all-loving presence that that helps them to forgive their shortcomings. So I do think that forgiveness is very strongly intertwined with many NDE experiences. But in terms of my writing, it's I tend to write characters that are trapped by their own guilt and can't move on with their lives until they can overcome their guilt, and placing them in this context where it's a kind of spirit realm, and I can take a lot of creative liberties with generating what they encounter and what kind of rules to this world there are. The ability to personify their fears and insecurities and doubts into this shadow character that haunts them was very compelling to me, because it kind of, gave me the ability to take their the pain that they needed to overcome and manifest it into an adversary.
So when you write these kinds of characters, if they were to not overcome those challenges, the trauma, the past, whatever it is for them, what would happen?
I think they would be in a bad spot. Yeah, I mean, so unless you're making kind of a tragic movie in which characters, they succumb to the obstacles that are placed in front of them, and it's kind of, and they fall victim to their own flaws, that's certainly a type of movie that exists, and and some very effective tragedies have been made, as going back to the times of the Greeks and Shakespeare and et cetera, et cetera. But the kinds of stories that I like to tell are, even if they get dark and they get intense, ultimately I want the characters to overcome their what's holding them back and overcome their obstacles. And even if they don't necessarily get what they want, they get what they need. And that's kind of a major distinction between tragic stories and stories that tell kind of have a more uplifting arc, where the characters overcome their obstacles. So yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about what would happen if the characters failed to forgive themselves, but they would probably live a much sadder and more diminished existence at the end of the film than they would have if they had been able to overcome their shadow.
Now, when you're making a movie, it starts with this idea, and then step by step, it's just becoming concrete and it's becoming this end product. What is your hope for the audience when they watch the film that you made? What do you hope they feel and they think and maybe they learn from the film?
Yeah, so I have had the privilege of screening the film at several film festivals and watching it with audiences. And I have come to learn, not everyone gets the film, but the people who do get it, they really connect with it. They really resonate with it. It's kind of every filmmaker's dream, but I was sitting in front of someone in a screening, and like I could hear them crying for the entire run of the movie. And, to know as a filmmaker, to know that you had an impact on a stranger that you've never met before and probably will never meet again, is that's kind of the main reason why I do it and why a lot of us do it. So that was, that was a very gratifying experience to know that something that I created had such an emotional impact on someone. So yeah, just as people who undergo NDEs, often experience a kind of renewed lease on life and a renewed perspective on what's important. I don't know if my film has that same power, but if it could help aid people in, looking at the things that they need to forgive themselves for, and through seeing these characters go through this journey and learn to forgive themselves, if that could possibly give people permission to forgive themselves, then that would be the whole purpose, the reason I do it.
How has the film changed you? So you've mentioned on the personal side you've met your wife through doing this film, but is there anything that you have learned where you have changed your outlook on after doing this movie?
Yeah, well, when you make any movie, but I feel like especially with this movie, it's such a leap of faith where there's so many uncertainties and so many unknowns and so many things that almost go wrong, that you you can't plan for everything, and you have to be a bit foolish and kind of insane in the amount of risk that you're willing to take on because you just have to commit to creating this thing, even with all the many pitfalls that are along the way. And so, yeah, making this movie really taught me how to just take a leap of faith and trust that things will work out, even though you have no factual reason to believe that they will. That things, the puzzle pieces often fall into place when you just take the jump and say, I don't know how I'm going to do this thing, but I'm going to do it.
So tell me more about the release. You've had a few screenings. When is the movie going to be released and where can we watch it?
Sure. So it'll be released on Valentine's Day, February 14th, on Amazon and a couple other streaming services, Fandango, Hoopla, um, and some cable networks. I know it'll be in kind of English speaking territories, so the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK. I'm not sure it'll be in other non-English speaking territories. And then it'll continue to be rolled out over the next few months on additional streaming services. But after Valentine's Day, if you just look up where to watch Upon Waking, I'm sure the internet will direct you on how to do it.
Awesome. And for everybody that's maybe a bit on the fence on whether they should be watching it or not, what would you say to them? Why should they watch the movie?
That's a tough question. I guess I would say you might just heal your soul. Who knows? I'm not going to make a guarantee, but people have come up to me and told me that it was a very healing experience for them, and so it it at least has the possibility of you know of helping people to forgive themselves, and that's whatever possibility that is, that's a golden opportunity.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. So I'm very much looking forward to watching the movie myself.